It was 2:13 a.m. when my phone buzzed with a bank alert, so sharp and bright it felt like a slap in the dark. I was half asleep, my mouth dry, the winter air turning my bedroom into a refrigerated box. And the glow of the screen made the wrinkles on my hands look like cracks in old porcelain. The notification wasn't subtle. Transfer completed, $148,500. For a moment, I honestly thought it had to be fraud. The kind you read about and pity from a distance, until I saw the account name. It went to my son's business account, the one he claimed didn't even exist anymore. I swung my legs out of bed and my bare feet hit the floor. Ice cold and unforgiving, and I could hear the house breathing around me, the heater clicking. The faint hum of the refrigerator, the tired, settling sounds of an old home that had seen too many compromises. Then I remembered the afternoon before, the harmless paperwork, the pen they handed me, the smiles that were too wide. My son's smile didn't reach his eyes, and my daughter-in-law's voice had been sweet in the way syrup is sweet, sticky, suffocating, impossible to wipe off. At 2:13 a.m., I finally understood what they had done. They didn't steal my money with a gun. They stole it with my own hand. I am 68 years old, and I earned every dollar the slow, honest way through decades of fatigue, discipline, and the quiet humiliation of being needed only when someone else wanted something. I taught for 41 years, standing in classrooms that smelled of dry erase markers and damp coats, correcting algebra tests while other people went to dinners and vacations. I spent my evenings sewing hymns and patching knees because my boy grew fast and my husband's promises grew faster than our bank balance. There were nights I stitched until 4 a.m., the lamp pooling light over fabric, the rest of the house asleep while I measured our life in thread. My husband, Leonard, had a talent for big dreams and a weakness for shortcuts. When he wanted to start a small contracting business, I sold my wedding bangles gold I'd received from my mother, because the bank wouldn't take potential as collateral. When he fell ill, I became his nurse as well as his wife, lifting him, feeding him, listening to his lungs rattle like loose coins in a tin. After he died, I kept going because I had to, and because I told myself the sacrifices would mature into something tender: security, respect, gratitude. My son Ryan was my pride, my proof that all the hard work meant something. I paid for his college textbooks by tutoring evenings, and when he met Amanda Bright nails, expensive perfume, a laugh that sounded practiced, I tried to be generous about it. I reminded myself that mothers who cling too hard get turned into villains in family stories. So when they asked me to move in temporarily after the baby arrived, I said yes, because I believed I was joining a household, not entering a gilded cage. At first, they treated me like a trophy grandmother, parading me in front of visitors. Amanda would say, "Look at her, still so strong," and Ryan would squeeze my shoulder like I was a piece of furniture he was proud to own. But after the baby stopped being new and the exhaustion settled into routine, I noticed the language changing. It wasn't outright cruelty at first. It was small edits to my place in the home, as if they were rewriting me in pencil. Amanda began calling my room the spare, even though it held all my clothes, my medicines, and the framed photo of Leonard that I still spoke to when the house felt too loud with other people's lives. Ryan started using phrases like, "We'll see," and "let's not make it complicated," which is what people say when they've already decided and want you to stop asking questions. The house smelled more and more like stale tobacco because Ryan had taken up smoking again, swearing he only did it in the garage, but the odor clung to his shirts and drifted into the hallway like a bad omen. I tried to keep my dignity polished. I cooked. I did laundry. I watched the baby so they could reconnect. I told myself I was building closeness, okay? But closeness doesn't feel like being managed. And I began to feel managed in ways I couldn't name yet, like a bank account you keep alive only until you've drained it properly. The day they finally insulted my dignity out loud was a Sunday. Bright outside and cold inside. The kind of day where sunlight makes you feel exposed rather than comforted. We were at the dining table and Amanda served lunch in a way that looked generous until you saw the portions. Ryan got the biggest piece of chicken. Amanda took the crisp skin. The best part. Oh. I was offered what was left dry meat and a scoop of vegetables that looked like they'd been reheated too many times. When I reached for a second spoonful, Amanda's hand hovered over the serving dish like a lid snapping shut. She smiled, but her eyes stayed flat. "Mom," she said, and she always called me that in front of Ryan as if she had adopted me like a stray. "You don't need more. You barely move these days. Let's not waste food." My cheeks burned so hot they made my eyes water. I looked at Ryan, expecting him to say something, anything, but he kept chewing as if my humiliation was just seasoning. Then he added casually, like he was commenting on the weather, "Amanda's right. We're tight right now. You have your pension. You can buy snacks if you want." That sentence asterisk, "you have your pension asterisk," wasn't a fact. It was a warning. It was a boundary drawn around my worth, reducing my lifetime of labor to a number they could calculate and harvest. In that moment, I saw the contradiction in Ryan's face. His mouth tried to look neutral, but his jaw tightened with irritation, like my existence was an expense line item. I swallowed the dry chicken and felt something inside me go still. The way an animal goes still when it realizes the predator is already close. 2 weeks later, Amanda brought me tea and sat beside me with a folder in her lap, acting so tender you would have thought she'd had a religious awakening. The tea smelled of chamomile, but there was something metallic underneath, like the teaspoon had been left too long in the cup. Ryan stood behind her, not sitting, not relaxing, hovering the way people hover when they want to intimidate without looking like they're doing it. Amanda sighed dramatically. "We've been worried about you," she began. "What if you fall? What if you have a stroke? What if bills go unpaid and your accounts get locked? It would be such a mess for everyone." "For everyone," I repeated, tasting the phrase like it was spoiled. Ryan finally spoke. "Mom, it's simple. It's just a power of attorney and some bank authorization forms, so we can help you if something happens. You trust me, right?" Trust, that word was the lever. They used it the way thieves use crowbars, quietly, confidently, with practiced pressure. Amanda opened the folder, and the papers were covered in dense text, highlighted sections, sticky notes that said "sign" in cheerful yellow. She handed me a pen that clicked too loudly in the silence. And I noticed the way her nails tapped the table as if keeping time to my compliance. I asked to take the papers to my room to read them properly. Amanda laughed gently, like I'd made a sweet joke. "Oh, it's standard," she said. "And honestly, it's a lot of legal language. They'll just stress you out. We already had a lawyer look at it. Should have heard the alarm bells. Should have stood up and said no. But I was tired and I was living in their house and the baby was napping and the air felt thin. Most of all, I still had the old mother reflex to protect my son's feelings, to keep peace, to avoid being labeled difficult. So I signed where they pointed, trusting my own child the way you trust your own heartbeat. That was the day they tricked me into signing away my life savings. The transfers didn't happen all at once, as how they kept it from looking like a robbery. It was a slow bleed disguised as account restructuring, investment optimization, moving money into a better yield. Amanda would use those phrases the way people use perfume to cover the smell of something rotting. At first I noticed little things. Paper statements stopped coming. When I asked, Ryan said, "We went paperless, Mom. Safer that way." When I tried to log into my account online, my password didn't work. Amanda offered to handle it, her voice soft, her hands quick. Then I began receiving the alerts, tiny withdrawals. These I didn't recognize. Transfers labeled like internal business movements. I told myself there had to be an explanation. I clung to that lie because the truth was too ugly. That the son I raised was standing beside a woman who saw me as an asset to liquidate. But the night I received the $148,500 transfer alert at 2:13 a.m., denial finally snapped like brittle glass. I walked into the hallway and the floorboards were cold enough to sting through my slippers. From the garage, I heard the click of a lighter and smelled tobacco curling under the door. Ryan was awake and so was Amanda. They weren't worried about my safety. They were awake because thieves don't sleep well after a big haul. I didn't confront them that night. I didn't rush in screaming because rage is a gift you hand to manipulators. They use it to paint you as unstable. Instead, I built a quiet war plan, the way I used to build lesson plans, step by step, evidence by evidence. The first tool was technical and simple. I turned on push notifications for every account I still had access to, including my pension deposit and credit report monitoring. The second tool was a pocket voice recorder I ordered online, small enough to hide in the seam of my cardigan. I also placed a tiny Wi-Fi camera in my room, disguised as an air freshener. Not because I wanted to spy like a villain, but because I needed proof if they tried to claim I was confused later. Then I did something they never expected. I went to my bank in person, alone on a Tuesday morning, wearing my oldest coat so I looked harmless and forgettable. The branch smelled of printer, toner, and stale carpet, and the young banker spoke to me slowly at first. The way people speak to elderly women they assume can't understand their own money. I corrected him politely, asked for the account access history, asked which phone numbers had been used for two-factor authentication, asked for copies of every form signed in the last 90 days. When he printed the documents, my stomach turned. There were signatures that looked like mine but weren't, mine strokes too heavy, curves too rushed. There were forms that expanded Ryan's power of attorney beyond emergency help into full authority to transfer and close accounts. And there was a brand new business account linked to my funds, opened 3 months earlier with my identity as beneficial party, a neat legal trick that made the theft look like consent. Consent manufactured with asterisk forged signatures. Asterisk. I left the bank with copies in a sealed envelope and a strange calm settling over me. The calm wasn't peace, was focus. Over the next 10 days, I gathered more than documents. I gathered patterns. I watched Amanda's spending like a weather system that always moved toward luxury. New heels clicked across the tile at midnight. Packages arrived, daily designer bags, skincare sets, gadgets that cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Ryan's silver luxury sedan, the one he'd once claimed was a lease through work, suddenly had a custom wrap and new rims. And then there was the lie they told everyone else, that I was becoming forgetful. I heard Amanda on the phone, her voice syrupy and concerned. "We're doing our best," she told someone, "but she's declining. We're trying to manage her finances because it's safer." I stood in the hallway listening, the tobacco smell from the garage mixing with Amanda's floral perfume, until I felt nauseated. That was the moment I understood their endgame. They weren't only stealing my money, they were building a narrative that would make my protest meaningless. So I made sure my evidence would speak louder than their story. During dinner, I said softly, "I've been thinking about what you told me about safety. I want to make sure everything is arranged properly. Can you explain again what those papers did? Just so I'm not confused." Ryan exhaled like I was a chore. "Mom, we already went over this." Amanda smiled too widely. "Just gives us flexibility," she said. "So we can move money around if needed. It's not like it's leaving the family." I leaned in. "So you can transfer from my savings into your business account if you think it's needed." Ryan's eyes flicked away for a second. That tiny flick was the contradiction, the guilt trying to crawl out before he shoved it back down. "It's temporary," he said. "We're investing it." "You don't understand how these things work. And when was it needed to transfer $148,500 at 2 in the morning?" I asked, still quiet, still gentle. Amanda's smile cracked at the edges. "Oh, don't be dramatic," she said, and her tone sharpened. "You would have spent it on doctors and paranoia anyway, for building a future." I felt my pulse steady. A recorder captured every syllable. "So," I said, "your future, not mine." Ryan's voice hardened. "Mom, you live here. We pay for everything. Stop acting like a victim." There it was, the confession. Not a legal admission, but the moral one. They believed I was already paid for, already owned. 3 days later, I told them we were meeting my estate planner to finalize everything. Amanda arrived dressed like she was attending a victory ceremony. Heels clicking, lipstick perfect. Ryan drove us there in the silver sedan, hands tight on the steering wheel, the cabin smelling faintly of tobacco and synthetic leather. The lawyer's office was quiet, beige, and cold in that professional way that makes people behave. My attorney, Ms. Patel, greeted us with calm eyes and a stack of folders that looked heavier than they were. Ryan tried to charm her. Amanda tried to dominate the conversation. I sat and watched them perform. Then Ms. Patel slid the documents across the table. "Mrs. Chen," she said to me, "these are the forms currently on file at your bank. We also have the access logs, the linked phone numbers, and the transfer history." Ryan's face stiffened. Amanda's lips parted slightly, like she'd forgotten how to breathe. Ms. Patel raised a hand, calm as a judge. "If you continue, I'll ask you to leave. Mrs. Chen is prepared to file a police report for financial exploitation and identity fraud, and to seek immediate revocation of the power of attorney." Ryan's throat bobbed as he swallowed. "Mom, please. We can fix this." I watched him carefully and felt something ugly settle into place. He wasn't sorry. He was afraid. There's a difference, and you can hear it in the voice. Fear is frantic. Remorse is broken. I opened my final folder. "There's more," I said, and I slid a new set of documents forward. "This is my separate trust account created years ago, funded before Leonard died. You never knew about it because you never needed to. It's not linked to your power of attorney. You didn't steal my entire life savings, Ryan. You stole what you could reach." Amanda's eyes widened with greedy shock, and that was almost funny in a bitter way. Even cornered, she was calculating what else might still be available. Ms. Patel's voice turned crisp. "We will proceed with restitution demands. Funds must be returned within 72 hours or we file. In addition, we will notify the bank's fraud unit and request criminal investigation." I leaned forward and my words felt like the closing of a door. "You made me feel like a burden in your home. Now you will learn the *** law of consequences. ***. Ryan's shoulders sagged. Amanda's face twisted into a look I'll never forget, rage and panic, like a mask melting. For the first time in months, I wasn't the elderly woman they could manage. I was the author of the ending. They returned the money within 2 days, not because they suddenly became decent people, but because the threat of exposure is the only language some hearts understand. I moved out the following week. Not dramatically, not with screaming and slammed doors, but quietly, with a moving company and a checklist. My new place is a small condo in a well-run retirement community where the hallways smell like lemon cleaner instead of tobacco, and the floors are warm underfoot. The neighbors are polite without being nosy, and nobody calls me a burden when I ask for an extra towel. If you're listening to my story and thinking, "That could never happen to me," I want you to understand something. Manipulation rarely arrives wearing a villain's face. Sometimes it arrives with tea and a pen, with a soft voice and highlighted sticky notes. And sometimes survival means you stop begging to be loved properly and start protecting yourself properly. I did not win by becoming cruel. I won by becoming awake.